Thank you very much, Ciancora. And, you know, I speak fairly often inside this down. There's a lot of things I probably wouldn't have a good verse on, but certainly when it comes to the community voluntary sector, that's the sector I came from. And that got me elected to Dáil. So I do speak with some level of expertise, and I'm on 25 community voluntary groups. I've been on that for a number of years, and you know they've delivered. And the sad thing about the charity regulators, there's a lot of them groups, Minister, that have just raised a little bit of local money. It might be the tidy towns, it might be something for meals and wheels or small thing, and now they're regulated to the very last. Some of them to the point that they've had to step aside and walk away. I'm not saying that regulation isn't important, but certainly regulation should be in place for voluntary organisations or charitable organisations who get funding from the state. But when people get letters today, and they're community voluntary people, in a lot of cases elderly, they walk away and the organisation collapses. And this is what happened during the week when I got a phone call from a group in West Cork who got one of those letters stating that they had to have their accounts in order, whatever. Now, they had a few quid collected for years, doing a little bit of tidy towns, buying a few flowers when the time came, and little bits. They weren't a tidy towns group, they were a little development association. They were happy out. They said they won. They're going to disband and collapse and hand the money that's left to another charitable organisation locally, which is very wrong, because they had done no wrong. They collected no money from the state, and the bit of money they did collect was honestly given by the local people, happy to be given back to the local people. But the fact is, that's gone, and that's after happening quite a lot of places. And I'd like to ask the Charitable Regulatory Authority to clarify where, there is organisations after collapsing, especially during COVID, and there could be tens and tens of thousands of euros gone back into the system. Where did that money go to? Did that money go back to the community that the money was taken out of? So the organisation could be local, could be wherever, West Cork, whatever. They could have had 5,000 in the account, they could have 55,000 in the account. Where did that money end up? Well, that's very, very unfair if that isn't clarified, because we do need to know that. The charity sector has faced several problems recently. Some charities like the Peter McFerry Trust, the Transgender Equality Network of Ireland, TENI, Child Fund Ireland, BOHR and Console have had issues that led to investigations. These problems have hurt the reputation of the charity sector over the past 7 years. For example, the ability of a controversial transgender group to retain state funding despite persistent failures to submit accounts and other governance and compliance issues should raise serious questions about the decision-making around the dispersal of taxpayers' money. The Transgender Equality Network of Ireland has managed to retain its generous grant funding from the HSE. That is from the hard-pressed taxpayers, despite failing to produce audited financial accounts for 3 years in a row. In 2019, they managed to pull some 470,000 into their pot, with most of that coming from the taxpayer from various sources: the HSE, the Dormant Account Funds, and through Rethink Ireland, etc. in 2021. Their income was almost 508,000, again with the most coming from public funds. Most of that money was used to fund salaries, yet they were unable to produce audited accounts to the HSE for some reason. Despite TENI's grave financial failings, they have been given extraordinary leeway by government and the HSE. Bad actors within the sector mean that all charities have seen a decrease in their income, and 1 in 3 charities reported a drop in the income due to these scandals. There is a real possibility of a contagion effect from these issues, which could impact public trust. People are concerned about how charities use their money, especially the high salaries of senior staff. The chief executive of the regulator has advised that not every charity needs a CEO, especially not one who is paid a high salary before any fundraising has been done. She also raised concerns about charities where the CEO is the only employee or one of only 2 employees. People want to know how their donations are used and what the charity has achieved. Clear information on these areas would increase trust and confidence, Minister. Media reports have highlighted issues with governance and public trust. There was a 13% increase in the number of concerns about charities reported by the public in 2022. Many charities failed to meet their obligations under governance standards last year, with 41% failing to file their annual finances and activities on time. The chief executive of the regulator authority has said it's disappointing to see so many charities missing deadlines to submit annual reports about their finances. She said there is a clear link between public trust in the charity sector and transparency and accountability within the sector. However, the wheel The National Association of Charities, Community Groups and Social Enterprises has said that there are resources issues in achieving compliance with the governance process. They argue that the state has invested in developing regulation and compliance process for the sector, but has not invested in supporting the capacity of charities to comply within these processes. The Charities Regulator is established in 2014 as responsible for regulating charitable organisations and protecting charitable assets. It maintains the register of charities, which includes all charities operated in the state. It is a mission to regulate the charity sector in the public interest, ensure compliance with law and support best practice in the governance, management and administration. And as I said earlier, Minister, the issue we have here, especially with organisations like Meals on Wheels, community councils, community cares, community alerts, they're all organisations that are run by volunteers. It doesn't matter what age they're still volunteers. They're giving up their time free, and they'll be meeting with all this regulation, and you know what's happening, they're walking away. And I know you'll say, where do we find a fine line here? But we certainly have to understand that the majority of community voluntary work that's being done out there is being done by volunteers that don't have maybe the expertise to sit down and start spending days trawling through paperwork and so on. So they basically hand in the bill, pay the cheque for the little bit that was bought so that they can put the Meals on Wheels on the table or for other people out there. And what we're expecting them to do in with the Charities Regulatory Action, we're expecting them all to be teams of professionals. It's not going to happen. So what we're doing is we're seeing a run from organisations of genuine, brilliant people who stepped up to the mark for 20 or 30 or 40 years, who are willing to do it with their bare hands and their bare feet. And the state don't recognise that. And good God, if anything happens to them, the state will collapse, because they're in many ways running our country. And it's, you know, I know Cancer Connect in West Cork, I know, and imagine they sit into their cars and they drive up and all that, and some of them may have resources if they link up to another group and another group. But what's happening is we're starting to lose community volunteer organisations left, right and centre, because we're over-regulated. And these, again, I fully understand, if they're getting state money, they certainly have to be accountable, and certainly a lot of them are. And I look at people that have done some huge work down through the years and have been treated horrifically and horribly. And I have to name one today, and I asked him could I name his name so that I wouldn't in any way, you know, damage his reputation, but I won't in this one. But Tony Wilkinson. Now, Tony's been to the Dáil several times here representing Parkinson's Ireland, and he's an astonishingly great man. And I know it for a fact. I have no reason to praise him above anybody else in this country. But the facts are, people were ringing Tony from all over the country because they had Parkinson's, they needed help. And Tony looked outside the box, sometimes to get that help for them. And he looked from within the box, Minister. But Parkinson's Ireland decided to get rid of him. And it's astonishing. I'm a member of Parkinson's Ireland, so I'm well able to talk within my rights here. I attended the meetings, stormy meetings. There's no Parkinson's branch in Cork at this present time. There's no functioning branch. There's been no AGM. Parkinson's Ireland are getting state money. They certainly have to be answerable. Not the community alert or the community council trying to do a little bit of cleaning around the village and are getting no state money. But Parkinson's Ireland have to be. And when you have somebody like Tony and Katie's wife and others that totally and utterly depended on the work he done, and because of someone up along the line decided he's stepping on our toes and we've got to get rid of him because he's one step ahead of us. And he was delivering on their magazine, he was delivering on information. There was never a call made that he didn't respond to. The problem was I was getting him to respond myself personally to other politicians that would talk to me about Parkinson's. I'd say, look, this man will explain what could be done. And he was an astonishingly outstanding man. And I'm very, very disappointed that Parkinson's Ireland have decided in their wisdom to get rid of him, and have decided in their wisdom to call an AGM in Cork on the 23rd of September, September, that never took place, in 2023. And they are now going to get state funding. They have to be called before the Health Committee. They have to be called before any regulatory body to explain themselves in total. And why is it a situation that we as, and I as a member, is there is no functioning Cork branch at this present time? And you know, like I so many, it's hard to point finger at one bad issue, because there's so many voluntary organisations I'd like to speak about here, and I could go on for hours, because when I was brought up in that sector, I just, I'm very passionate, because close family member of mine was at the early stages of Parkinson's, and it kind of stuck with me. And then, I just said, when the opportunity came to help, I decided to go on and be involved in an organisation that Tony was involved in, Tony Wilkinson, and he had delivered so much. And I'm extremely disappointed. I urge you, Minister, that this is an urgent issue that needs to be resolved, and I'll be taking the matter up further, because not just for Tony, it's for all the sufferers of Parkinson's out there that are finding it difficult, and sometimes they need help, and sometimes you need to look outside the box. But getting back to, the local groups, and it's the local groups I represent here mainly, not those who get funding. I have no issue with bigger organisations, they have to get funding, but the local groups, they have, delivered, Minister, time and time again in their local communities, and we need to spend, to make sure that there's a mechanism that protects those groups in this bill going forward. And if they're not protected, and if it's a one-size-fits-all solution here, it's going to lead to the decimation of voluntary organisations, that local communities, whether they're in Bandon or Clonakilty, I don't mind, Scull or wherever, and Goleen, and Castleover, they're delivering continuously on the ground. They're out every night. In some cases, it's the same people, because, if somebody's good at something, they'll be asked to attend it. But they definitely cannot take the workload that's been asked of them. They certainly feel that, and they speak to me quite a lot. And I did mention about the group that rang me the other day. I said, look, that's it, they can't do it. And what they'd done was, they got the letter, they went and took it to an accountant, and he said, lads, you're going to have to audit accounts, you're going to have to, they said, sure, we're only maybe 2 checks a year. And they have money in the account, but he said, I'm sorry, that's what this letter states. And if that letter states that, well, that's it. Another issue we have is new community voluntary, genuine community voluntary groups coming on and can't get their charitable status. Like, surely be to God, there's a system there that you can get your charitable status, or you can, and these want to maybe be audited, and the Kilbritton Autism Centre is one that they've been on to be very often looking for that, and they've collected tens of thousands of euros, and they want to be a charitable organisation, and no matter what way they move, no matter what side or what angle they were coming at, they were being refused. And what are we doing here, Minister? Are we now kind of clearly stating that we don't want new community voluntary groups coming on board that are going to be strong, that will deliver for areas all over our country, that have delivered but will want to continue to deliver? So are we now stating that in future we won't allow these become charitable organisations? Because there cannot be any process in this country that takes more than 2 to 3 months that can be accepted. These, again, are voluntary people working hard in their community and are trying now to use their funds to pay someone to try and do something for them. That's an astonishing way. That's not good enough, Minister. And you must look, Minister, if you don't mind, please, please don't think I'm in any way attacking anything you're doing, because you've been very good to me anytime I've ever approached you. But you have to look into this, Minister, as part of this bill, that if a genuine organisation wants to set up, that it is allowed set up once it has its paperwork finished within a month to 6 weeks. No questions asked. Not 12 months, not 2 years, not all these fences put before people. It's just not going to work, Minister, that way. And we're pushing more and more people away from the voluntary sector. Instead of we trying to encourage them, because the more they do, the less the state has to do. And I know it because, you have rural social workers around West Cork that are working with community voluntary groups. All these community voluntary groups, and I'm involved with, say, one community council in Goleen, and at one time we had 17 workers, 2 schemes, and that's a small village. That's a bloody factory going. But at the same time, there was no great experts at doing paperwork. I remember Pobble coming down to inspect us one time. God almighty, wasn't seeing what the man wanted. Wasn't seeing what he wanted. So much so that he upset our brilliant treasurer, top-class treasurer, but she was a local person, voluntary doing her job, and he looked for so much paperwork. She said to me, it's over, I'm finished, I've had it. Take my books and go away, she said. That was the end of it. And that's no way to treat people like that. It's okay for somebody that's well paid, but like what he was looking for was very little as such in the realm of things, but he made it so bloody difficult for us to deliver. And he spent 2 days, I don't know who paid him, trying to hoover through our bookwork. But that's the whole point I'm trying to make, is that's not what the 16 members of the Community Council were set up for. We were set up to provide jobs. We were set up to deliver. We built a community centre, all through community voluntary people collecting money. We built a community pitch. We'd done more in Goleen than people in County Kildare told me that they had themselves inside in West Cork. And it's been used today, and sadly the population is small. But look, we'll fight that day. That's another battle. But the whole point was that we seem to have this gentleman there at the moment, he's trawling over paperwork the whole time, trying to keep everything under control. But he's just like any ordinary folk. He's not an accountant. He's not a professional of any side other than a professional, maybe man in his farm. But that's not the way. That we have to be very, very careful here, that we don't over-regulate things, that we put these people that are delivering locally. Imagine 17 jobs, Minister, in a rural community, rural social scheme, CE scheme, HSE, CSP. I named the schemes one after another. Bang, 3 workers here, 2 workers there, 4 workers there. They were great. And we still have quite a lot of 11 or 12, and they delivered the streaming the graveyards in our community. They kept the streets clean. They kept when we had no local authority workers, they were gone. They kept the pitch going, the community centre going, the Meals on Wheels going. That's only just a fraction of what is going on. So what my point, Ministers, we just want to be careful. Don't throw everything over don't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. That we will get so over-regulated that we're looking at the likes of Parkinson's Ireland, are looking at whatever, maybe there's a lot of genuine organisations I should be mentioning here too, but we're looking at them so tight and so much that we're actually throwing the voluntary community alerts and community councils, the community cares and the business associations all in under the one bus, and it doesn't fit, because these guys aren't getting paid. I never see anybody in my community council or community alert I'm involved, the community care I'm involved, 2 community cares for that matter. I never see any one of them getting a brown cent for the work they done. But we'll still regulate them so much that some of them will, in my view, and are doing that. As I said to you during the week, I had one, are walking away. We're over-regulating things for ordinary small community voluntary groups. So I'd urge the Minister to look at that, give time and thought to that, because you have them in your constituency the same as I have them in mine. They've delivered. They've been out there handing out Meals on Wheels to people living on their own. They've been out there visiting people, putting pendants, and I have to mention 2 people here this evening that have died recently in West Cork, Dennis O'Neill and Pat McCarthy, and they delivered diligently to their community, and Alan Finn and Skull, 3 great community voluntary people that have passed away, unfortunately very close to each other, and what they had done for the people. But they never looked for a brown cent. They never looked for a brown cent. They just wanted to do it for the good of their community. And they saw the community centre built and the community pitch built, and there's 12 new houses in Skull, and it's their organisations that built that. They didn't touch any funds as such other than work with the bodies that are out there to make sure that they delivered. And these people will walk away, these people that are still out there will walk away at some stage from this if we pressurise them anymore. And what I'm saying is that, yes, the likes of the bigger charitable groups out there that have the CEOs, well, they have the finances to do the figures, and they have the know of it all to do the figures. But for the ordinary community voluntary organisations, spare them. And spare a serious thought for them. And I would ask you, I said under the Charitable Regulatory Act, some organisations collapsed, including some in my own constituency, and I'd like to know where that money went and who has the authority to spend that money. The charitable regulator said it's him or her or whoever's in charge. But my argument is, surely be to God, if there's 20,000 organisations funding and there's elderly people and they've given up and walked away, that 20,000 should be distributed back into that community in grants in some other way. and not taken out and maybe handed up to whatever. The same as if it was Dublin, I wouldn't expect it to come to West Cork, or vice versa. So I know organisations that have collapsed, and their monies have been given back as such, are taken, and they've been left now with zero funds and zero delivery for that community. Thank you.